He invited his poor ex-wife to shame her, but when she arrived, everyone gasped. New York City glittered like a field of stars at night. The skyline shimmered against the dark velvet of the Hudson River. Every window a fragment of ambition. Every reflection a promise of power. In the heart of Manhattan, the Grand Meridian Hotel towered above the city, its golden light spilling over the marble steps, where chauffeurs opened doors for guests dressed in designer gowns and tailored suits. Inside, the grand ballroom looked like something out of a royal dream. Crystal chandeliers hung above mirrored floors, an orchestra played soft waltzes, and journalists from elite magazines whispered among the guests, eager to capture society wedding of the year. Tonight, Nathaniel Pierce, a wealthy investment mogul known for his charisma and relentless hunger for success, was marrying Isabella Grant, a model adored by tabloids for her beauty and scandalous charm. Everyone in New York's elite circle wanted an invitation, and Nathaniel made sure one reached a woman he hadn't seen in 2 years. That woman was Clara Evans, his ex-wife, and the invitation wasn't a gesture of kindness. It was bait. 2 years ago, Nathaniel had been a rising star in finance, his face often appearing on magazine covers beside headlines like, "The Man Who Turns Everything to Gold." But behind the charming smile was arrogance and fear of imperfection. When he discovered that Clara, his quiet, devoted wife, was pregnant, not with one child, but triplets, he panicked. "She'll ruin my image," he had said coldly one night. "3 mouths? Crying? No, Clara, you'll drag me down." Those words carved a scar she carried long after he walked out the door. Within weeks, he was gone, replaced by headlines of his new glamorous relationship with Isabella Grant. Clara was left alone, penniless, and heavily pregnant. When the triplets arrived, 3 tiny lives that barely fit in her trembling hands. Clara worked night shifts cleaning offices, wiping the same kind of marble floors where she once used to walk beside her husband at gala events. Every night, she whispered to her sleeping children, "One day, we'll stand tall again. Mama promises." Now, 2 years later, Nathaniel had it all, or so he believed. His company had just announced a billion-dollar merger. His bride was a media darling, and his guest list included senators, movie stars, and CEOs. The one thing missing? Closure. He wanted to see Clara again, broken, envious, humiliated. He wanted her to watch what she lost. That's why he had his secretary send her a handwritten invitation with gold embossed letters. "You are cordially invited to the wedding of Nathaniel Pierce and Isabella Grant, to be held at the Grand Meridian Hotel, Manhattan." He imagined her arriving in a wrinkled dress, trying to hide her exhaustion. He imagined the smirk he'd wear when she'd see him, surrounded by wealth and beauty. But Nathaniel Pierce had no idea who Clara Evans had become. That evening, the guests were already buzzing inside the ballroom when the tall glass doors swung open. A hush fell. Heads turned. In the doorway stood Clara, not the fragile, weary woman Nathaniel expected, but a vision of elegance and strength. Her gown was the color of the emerald ocean, flowing gracefully with every step. Her hair shimmered beneath the chandelier lights, and her eyes, once filled with quiet hurt, now burned with quiet confidence. By her side walked Ethan Ward, a tall, composed man in a black tuxedo. His reputation preceded him, a global investor known for his integrity, influence, and mysterious past. And behind them, like 3 little angels in matching suits, walked her triplets, their small hands clutching each other's, their smiles radiant with innocence and pride. The orchestra missed a note. The guests whispered. Even Isabella's face paled, sensing something shifting in the air. Nathaniel froze. The smirk he had prepared faltered. He stepped forward, forcing a chuckle. Well, Clara Evans, you actually came." Clara smiled, calm, poised. "You invited me, Nathaniel. It would have been rude to decline." Her voice was steady, refined, a voice that carried not bitterness, but dignity. Isabella stepped closer to Nathaniel, her hand gripping his arm. "Who's this?" she whispered. "My ex-wife," he murmured. "Don't worry, she's—" But before he could finish, Ethan Ward shook hands with the nearby guests, familiar faces from the investment world. "Mr. Ward," someone exclaimed, "you're the one who saved the Baxter merger." and the keynote speaker for tonight's Global Finance Forum. A murmur rippled through the crowd. People turned toward Nathaniel, confused. Ethan smiled mildly. Yes, and I'm here tonight as Clara's partner, in business, and perhaps more. Nathaniel's throat tightened. Partner? He echoed. Ethan nodded. We've been working together for months. Her startup, Greenhaven, is revolutionizing sustainable architecture. I'm her primary investor. A burst of applause followed. Clara inclined her head graciously, every inch the woman who had risen from ashes. Nathaniel's hand trembled as he reached for a glass of champagne. His carefully curated world began to tilt, but the night was far from over. As dinner began, the atmosphere thickened. Nathaniel couldn't keep his composure. He leaned across the table toward Clara. So this is your little show, then? Pretending you're one of us now. Clara didn't flinch. No, Nathaniel, I'm not pretending. I just stopped believing your world was above mine. Ethan leaned back calmly, his gaze steady. You really shouldn't have invited her tonight, Pierce. Nathaniel sneered. And why is that? Ethan reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a sleek leather folder. I thought you might ask. He opened it slowly, the sound slicing to the murmurs of the hall. Inside were documents, charts, and a USB drive. Proof, Ethan said, of fraudulent transfers, shell corporations, and accounts registered under false identities. All linked to your company, Pierce Capital Holdings. The orchestra stopped mid-song. Journalists leaned forward. Cameras flashed. Nathaniel's eyes widened. You can't prove anything. Oh, we can, Ethan replied coolly. In fact, the authorities already have. You see, one of your former accountants reached out to Clara's foundation, looking for help for his family after you destroyed his career. His evidence was quite compelling. The crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Isabella's face drained of color. Nathaniel, is this true? He stammered. No, it's all lies. But even as he spoke, 2 uniformed officers appeared at the entrance of the ballroom. The tension shattered into chaos. Mr. Pierce, one of them said firmly, you're under arrest for corporate fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Gasps filled the room. Guests backed away. Photographers raised their cameras, capturing every second. Isabella tore the diamond ring off her finger and threw it at Nathaniel's chest. Enjoy your fame, darling, she hissed. You always wanted the spotlight. Then she turned and stormed out, her white gown trailing behind her like a ghost of arrogance. As the police led Nathaniel away, his gaze met Clara's. For the first time, she saw fear, not power, in his eyes. Clara, he said, voice breaking, you did this to me. She looked at him with quiet strength. No, Nathaniel, you did this to yourself. And with that, the man who once walked over her heart was escorted to the same golden doors he had so proudly entered, this time in handcuffs. The hall erupted into applause. Cameras clicked, not for the fallen mogul, but for the woman who had risen higher than anyone imagined. Clara stood still for a moment, breathing it in. The chandeliers glowed above her, and in that shimmering light, she felt years of pain dissolve. Her children ran to her, wrapping their tiny arms around her legs. Mommy, are we okay now? One of them whispered. She smiled through tears. Yes, my loves, we're more than okay. Ethan knelt beside them, his expression soft. You've got quite the mother, he said gently. The triplets giggled, hugging him too. Clara's heart swelled. And then, as if the night itself wanted a perfect ending, Ethan rose, took her hand, and before the whole room, knelt on one knee. Gasps rippled to the hall again, but this time they were of joy. Clara Evans, he said, voice steady but full of warmth, you showed the world what real strength looks like. If you'll have me, I'd be honored to stand by you and your children always. Her tears glimmered like diamonds as she nodded. Yes, Ethan, 1,000 times yes. Applause thundered through the room. Music swelled again, not the old waltz of vanity, but a melody of rebirth. That night, the papers wrote headlines like, From Cleaner to CEO's Hero, the woman who brought down a fraudulent empire. But for Clara, it wasn't about revenge. It was about peace. The quiet kind that comes when you finally stop looking backward. On the hotel balcony, she stood with Ethan, watching the skyline she once feared she'd never belong to again. "Do you ever think about the past?" he asked softly. "Only to remember how far we've come," she said, "and to teach my children that dignity is wealth no one can take." He smiled, wrapping his arm around her shoulders. The city lights shimmered in her eyes. Below them, traffic hummed like a lullaby, and somewhere in the night, a clock struck midnight, marking not an ending but a beginning. The night that was meant to be Nathaniel Pierce's grand triumph became Clara Evans' rebirth. Narrator, Kindness Diaries USA. What an incredible story of strength and redemption. She was betrayed, abandoned, and humiliated. But instead of giving up, she rose from the ashes, turned pain into power, and found love that respected her worth. Dear friends, tell us in the comments, what lesson did this story teach you? If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Diaries USA, where true stories of hope and transformation come to life every day. Because sometimes losing everything is how we truly find ourselves.